Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for attending this very special episode that we have. We have Dr. Tim Dornemann, who's going to be our guest speaker. In a nutshell, he's the director of sports performance at Barton College in North Carolina, and also one of the resource speakers for Original Strength. That's his topic would be. And Athletes in Action Philippines and even in the US has been working with Dr. Tim Dornemann, for a long time now. And he has actually published 2 books already about sports training, strength training. Is that right, Dr. Tim, right? Two books you published already.
Yeah, 3.
3. I got 2 books with you signed. So there's this 3rd one I'm going to chase after. So without wasting any of your time, I'll give the mic to Coach Tim. Coach Tim, they're all yours.
All right, let me share my screen here real quick, and we'll get this shared over. Let me get this PowerPoint up. And just what I wanted to sort of share with you today is Original Strength. And it's a movement system. And Petit was saying that sometimes my mic goes in and out, so don't be afraid to let him know, or he'll let me know if I have to repeat anything. But what Original Strength is at its root is a movement system. Looking at how we move based on how God designed us to move to begin with. So as we're going through this, a little bit of my background, I teach in the exercise science and the kinesiology program, and I've been involved with strength conditioning at Barton College. And Original Strength originated about an hour from me in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, and I was able to go to a clinic and experience Original Strength resets from one of the founders, Tim Anderson. And basically, a little bit of my background, about 5 years ago, I had both my hips replaced. So with that, I had some limited range of motion. So by just going through some of these basic resets we're going to show you today, I could feel a big difference. And that's why I want to share it with you, and it's really exciting. But it really, what it goes to is, I wanted to share this first Bible verse, Psalms. Let me see if I can get my thing moving around here. But looking at Psalm 139, verse 14. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And really what Original Strength is about is going back to the basics, going back to how God designed us to be made, to move. And as we get older, as we deal with injuries, we move further and further away from the way we are designed to move. So this system, and I encourage you, if you have some room on the floor by you and you have a mat or something, things we're going to go through today, I encourage you to try them out and see how they help you. Okay, see if they help you feel better, move better, and you might be able to utilize these things. So let me share with you the foundations of this. So we're really looking at how movement starts with us as humans. So you think about a little baby. So, whether it's a son or daughter you think back on, or a niece or nephew, think back of, watching a baby move, and a lot of this will make sense. The first foundation is how we breathe. And we'll talk about this in detail as we go through that. But we learn how to breathe originally through our diaphragm. When you watch a baby breathe and they're laying on their back, their belly is rising up and down. They're not breathing out of the chest. It's only when they get sick and congested do they start breathing out of the lungs, out of their upper respiratory system. Otherwise, we breathe from that diaphragm where that diaphragm pulls down, expanding your lungs, allowing you to bring more air in. So we want to get back to that natural breathing, because sometimes as we get older, when we get into stressful situations, we get sick and we get into trapped into breathing out of our lungs, being lung breathers. So we're going to look at that. Then the next thing we do when we learn to move is the baby learns how to control their head. And we'll talk a little bit about the significance of that. And then the next thing in the movement process is rolling. So the baby learns how to roll from, your front to the back and the back to the front. And that takes a lot of motor control and strength in itself. Then once you can get from that rolling, the baby props itself up onto all fours and you can get into this rocking before you get into crawling and ultimately walking. So we'll talk about how we go back to the basics to really reset your body. And when we think about computers, you know that sometimes you just have to, your body gets stuck and you see that spinning wheel on your computer. Sometimes we need to reboot the computer and get it back to its default. That's what these resets are doing for our body. They're rebooting our system and allowing us to get back to normal. And that can make a big difference in our health and well-being. So these are a couple things that Tim Anderson passed on as like, why to reset. Our bodies are great creations that we've been given, and it can do a lot of different things. And we're made to be strong. Our body's not made to break down if it's moving properly all the time. We're not meant to get older and be tentative and fragile and injure all the time. We're meant to be strong if we're moving the way we were designed to move. And if we can get back to the basics, we can help heal our injuries, move properly, regain our strength, mobility, and even performance on the athletic side. So this is a very simple method that we can take from the basics of just moving your eyes to elevating it up to higher level actual performance-based systems by loading these resets, changing the body positions and things like that. But we're just going to show you the basics today, and you'll get a sense for how powerful just these basic elements of getting the body back to where it started. So we're based on 3 basic pillars. And the first thing starts with that diaphragmatic breathing, and that's what we're going to teach you first. The second thing is activating your vestibular system. Okay, and that's the system that helps you with your balance, and it integrates all your motor control. It's a first system that developed in our body as babies learn how to move their head, rock and roll, crawl and walk. But if we, especially nowadays, if we're just sitting around and not doing anything, that vestibular system gets dull. To keep it sharp, we need to move and activate that system. And you may have people you come across, or even if you're doing things today and trying these things out, if you haven't been activating this system, you could feel a little bit sick just by doing things like head nods. So if you feel that, just sort of step back and calm yourself down and do what's best for you. But knowing that the more we can activate the system, the sharper our movement can be and the better that we'll be as far as actually being able to move and perform the way that we're designed to. Okay? And then our third pillar is contralateral movement. And what I mean by that is movements that are opposite arm, opposite leg. Okay? So we're moving opposite sides of the body coordinated together. And if we add in that cross the body movement, okay, so if you bring your arm across the midline as you rotate, that's actually going to help with the brain in that you actually are crossing from right to left hemisphere in the brain. So people that have had strokes, and I've worked with some in assisted living, they can sit at a chair and just do marching, bring their legs up and down. Actually, sort of see if I can get myself back far enough in this. You can just do a seated march reaching across your body, and just that simple movement can get the brain reconnected, moving right and left side of the hemisphere. So these are very basic things, but they're also very, very powerful. And we're going to get you to experience them here in a couple minutes. So these are our big 5 resets, and they're called resets because they're resetting our neural system. Okay, so working with the neuromuscular system here. And what's so powerful with these things that I've found is, as an exercise scientist, I always learned about the nerves and muscles working together as the muscles turned on. Okay. And, I've been doing this, I just turned 50 last year. So I've been doing this for quite a while. And it wasn't until a couple years ago doing original strength that I really got an appreciation for the other half of the neuromuscular system. A big part is the neuromuscular system also puts the brakes on. So with my hips, when I had my hip replacement, I was limiting my movement because my body was putting on the brakes. It wasn't letting me move all the way through my range of motion. Okay? It was stopping me to try to protect me. So by doing these resets, it actually allows the body to let go. And that gives us more movement. It can enhance our health. And even when you're talking about sports, that opens up things for performance and injury prevention. So it's very, very powerful, even though it's very basic. So we're going to take you through how to breathe in using your diaphragm. So we'll put you in certain positions to really accentuate that. And then maybe show you some things you can do a little bit easier with your teams in a standing position. And then we'll take you into head control, and we'll explain, the theory behind all this, as well as rocking and rolling and even some crawling. And you may not be able to do crawling in your limited space, but we'll show you how it's done and different progressions that you can do with that as well. So as we get started, I'm going to try to use some video clips. We'll see how they work with the internet. If not, I can sort of explain them. But the first thing we're going to have you do in a second after I show you this is we're going to do some mobility testing throughout this session. I'm basically going to have you try to move, test your mobility, see how it feels. So try to think about how far you can move in these positions and how free you are to move. Because sometimes the movement distance won't change, but you'll do some of these resets and you go and try to do like an overhead squat. You may go as low, but you will feel freer doing it. Okay, so be in tune with your body with that. And we're just going to use 3 tests here for you to look at that. We're going to look at the toe touch test, shoulder mobility, and overhead squat. So I'm going to try to use my videos here because I actually went in and narrated these, and we'll see how this works. So your basic toe touch, we're just going to go and sort of show you. I have one of my grad students is sort of demonstrating, but you're just trying to reach as far as you can.
Here's our toe touch test as we reach down as far as we can, keeping the legs straight. You just want to see how far down you can go and what it feels like to move in that range of motion.
All right. Then with our overhead squat, you're looking at depth and how it feels. Here is our overhead squat test that we're going to use as one of our mobility tests. All we want to do is squat as low as we can as we keep the arms raised up. Arms are even with the ears. Feel how deep you're squatting and how it feels to get to that range of motion, because we're going to do this repeatedly today. And then our third one we're going to use is shoulder mobility. And Jake here on the video shows 2 different versions of this. He actually shows just a simple shoulder rotation at 90 degrees, and he also shows a bigger movement, which is probably the one that I would recommend, sort of feeling your extension. Shoulder mobility test, you can just do rotations at the shoulders, and then you can actually make this larger, going up into large shoulder movements, and you just want to feel how far you can move back, and then how does it feel to move in that range of motion. Shoulder mobility test, you can just do. So those are the 3 tests. So why don't we take a little second here, I'll sort of pause and give you some time to do these 3 tests. So have some space right where you're at, just do a quick toe touch stretch. Do like 2 or 3 overhead squats, feeling where you're, keeping your hands up nice and high, and then try to do that shoulder mobility. So I'll give you a second to do that here. So that's going to be your baseline stretch. So think about how far you moved, make a mental note of your distances, make a mental note of what that felt like, right? So when we're talking about breathing here, and I'll even try to bring my cursor over, we want to be doing a couple things in our breathing technique. You're born to be a diaphragmatic or belly breather. And what we're doing is that's going to help stabilize our spine. It's going to protect our spine, and it's also going to allow us to move well. So when we're doing our breathing, basically what we're going to be doing is we're keeping the mouth closed, and it's very important with our tongue position. Okay? And that's why I have this picture here on the right. Our tongue position is we want to have your tongue placed right behind the teeth on the roof of your mouth. So if you're thinking about where is that, the easiest thing to do is to swallow. So take a second and swallow, and I always swallow when I do this, so I always have pause. But when you swallow, that's where your tongue naturally goes. It naturally goes here behind your teeth on the roof of your mouth. So when we're doing this diaphragmatic breathing, we want to keep the tongue in that position. It's really opening up our airways, allowing that air to move efficiently. And by using our diaphragm and dropping this diaphragm down as we suck the air in, it's creating more room in our lungs to pull that air in. And then as that diaphragm contracts up, it helps expel that air out. It's just basically working on that pressure. So we really want to, and sometimes as we get older, we get trapped into this chest breathing, right? We almost sometimes have to take some time and reteach this. So that's why we're going to go through a couple exercises to sort of get you back into doing that. Okay. Big thing with belly, your diaphragmatic breathing, and you can do this all day, anytime. For me, now that I've been doing this regularly, it's sort of my default system, like it was supposed to be, like it was intended to be when we were born. So the big thing here is, other than stabilizing the spine, it also plays a big role in how our nervous system operates. So you got to remember, we have 2 systems we're working with. We have the sympathetic, which is that fight or flight, where we're all anxious and ramped up. And then we have the parasympathetic, where we're resting and digesting. Okay? So unless we're doing anything active, we want to be in that rest and digest mode, which is what we should be in most of the day if we want to be healthy. We don't want to always be keyed up and stressed. We want to be relaxed. Okay? And even in athletics and sports, it's important to teach our athletes how to turn these systems on and off. Our diaphragmatic breathing is what we call the reset within resets. It's a switch. It turns off that anatomic nervous system. So let's say, Philippines is huge for basketball. So let's say you have the team, you're playing the game, you're all ramped up, running up and down the court. You get fouled, and you need to make these foul shots. Okay, so we want to get out of this really stressed, amped up system, and we want to get into that parasympathetic relaxed mode so we can concentrate and make those foul shots. So I would recommend training your athletes to sort of sit there as they gather themselves. Maybe they take a couple rhythm dribbles, and they actually do some diaphragmatic breaths to calm themselves down, center themselves to be able to perform. Okay, so you can even use this strategically within our activity. So the first thing we're going to have you do, if you want to lay your mats on the floor, is we're going to put you into this what we call crocodile breathing position. Okay, you're going to place your hands on your head, on your forehead. You're just going to lay on the ground, and And as you're watching this, and I'll show you on the video, we're going to keep our tongue on the roof of the mouth. Mouth stays closed, and you're breathing in and out through your nose. Okay. We're going to bring up the video here, and what I want you to watch, if you can see, if I can get the cursor here, I want you to watch the lower back. If you watch really closely, you're going to see this rise up and down. Okay. And that what's happening there is it's a great way by laying on your stomach here to get into that diaphragmatic breathing, because if you are breathing, doing that sort of belly breathing and breathing in deep, you're going to be pushing your stomach into the ground. So reflexively, that's actually going to push your body up. So you're going to see this rise up and down. So, look at that real close and see if you can see that as we see Jake here doing this. This is what we call crocodile breathing. It's another way to really feel that you're breathing into your diaphragm. What you're going to do is just rest your forehead on your hands as you lay on your stomach. You're going to breathe in through your nose and out through your nose with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now, if you look at Jake's lower back here, you can actually see that back rise up as his stomach pushes into the ground. So it's a good way to feel that you're breathing from the right place diaphragmatically. All right, so what I want you to do is take a second here, if you have some space, lay down on the ground next to your computer or whatever you're watching this on, have your hands on your forehead, breathing in and out through your nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. Just take 5 good deep breaths and feel your stomach push into the ground. And if you're watching, so if you have somebody there with you, you're watching one of your players later on, watch and see if you can see that back rise up and fall. Okay? So I'll give you a little bit of time here to do that. Shouldn't take very long. All right. Our next breathing exercises are actually going to be done on our back. So if you flip over on your back, if you can see your screen, I'll show you these videos and actually have you try these in a second. But the basic one here, you're just resting your head on the ground, laying on your back. You can be comfortable, where your arms and legs are is wherever they're comfortable. But you're breathing in and out through the nose, tongue's on the roof of the mouth, and you want to put one hand on your stomach. So use that hand as a way to feel your stomach pushing up and down. So again, we're trying to really retrain you what it feels like to breathe diaphragmatically. And in this video, if you watch Jake's hand, you can actually see it rise up and down. Here is our basic breathing pattern. We're trying to breathe diaphragmatically and just laying on your back, nice and relaxed, hand on your stomach. And if you watch Jake's hand closely, you can see it rise and fall as we're doing that, what we call belly breathing, as we're breathing diaphragmatically, pulling air into our lungs. You're breathing through your nose, mouth is staying closed, in and out through the nose with the tongue placed on the roof of the mouth. Now to find that tongue placement, if you swallow, your tongue goes to the roof of your mouth. So that's where we want to have the tongue positioned as we do this diaphragmatic breathing. So let's take a second and give this a try. Put yourself in that position, hand on your stomach, taking 5 diaphragmatic breaths. So while you're doing that and listening, I'll explain what our next exercise is going to be. We're just going to change this up a tiny bit. We're actually going to do what we call a loaded breathing pattern, where we actually put you in a position that actually makes it a little bit more difficult to do that diaphragmatic breathing. And by doing that, we're actually giving your body more stimulation to react to. Okay? So what we're going to do here in this loaded breathing pattern, and you can barely see it on this video. You're going to see it better on the next one. But there's actually a little bit of space between Jake's head and the ground. just about 3 to 5 centimeters. Okay. And as you're doing this, and I'll try to sort of look at it here, is as you lift your head off the ground. So if I had the ground behind my head here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck my chin. So I'm going to tuck the chin in instead of bringing the chin to the chest. So I'm going to actually shift that down, bring my head off the ground a little bit as you do your diaphragmatic breathing. You'll feel it's a little bit more resistance as you do that. So you'll sort of see that here in this bottom video, and then we'll have you guys try it. Here what we're doing is actually starting to load the breathing pattern. You're still practicing at diaphragmatic breathing and feeling your stomach go up and down with your hand, but now you notice Jake has got his head lifted about 3 centimeters off the ground as he tucks his chin, making a double chin and breathing in through his nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth, and it's making it a little bit more difficult, increasing that stimulus. So we'll take a second here and let you give that a try. Try to raise your head up a little bit. Don't raise it too much. Tuck that chin, okay, as you bring that head off the ground slightly. And then keeping the mouth closed, tongue on the roof of the mouth, take 5 of those breaths and feel with your hand that belly rise up and down.
Excuse me, Dr. Tim.
Yep.
Would it? I'm gonna turn on their camera so that you could also see them doing it. So if you need to correct some of them. So guys, coaches, from this point on, I'll just turn on the cameras so that Dr. Tim can also see if you're doing it the right way or corrections might be needed.
Here is our basic breathing pattern. Here what we're doing is actually diaphragmatically and load the breathing pattern. Nice and relaxed, still hand on your stomach. Sorry about that, I'm trying to advance the slide.
Coaches, you can please turn on, if you could please turn on your cameras, your video camera, so we could also see, Coach Tim could also see you guys. We might see some of the coaches eating chips, Coach.
Well, there's a whole feeling thing. You have to, if you're an athlete, you got to feel your body. So with that, that's your first basic loaded breathing, is just by lifting that head up a little bit. You can also change the position.
Tim, I think the volume is down again.
So the picture you're seeing here is more of a shortened position. So here what you want to do is just relax your head on the ground again. You just bring your knees up. So you're basically shortening your body instead of being in that long position. And you can actually, in the video we're going to show you, you'll see.
Excuse me, Tim. Sorry to bother, but volume's down again. Maybe you could just wiggle the wire of the phones. Maybe we'll try that.
That better?
Now it's cracking. It's going down again.
Yeah, I might have to get another headset. I can't.
Yeah, maybe just the line-in phones. Maybe would do the trick. The earphones with the mic. The plug-in.
Yeah, I just don't have any. So.
Okay. It's down again. It's low volume. It's at low volume right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can actually.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, just let me know, and we can. Yeah.
Right, we're good now. We're good now.
Okay. So your second position here, you can see in the picture, you're just bringing your knees up, your chest, and actually in the video, you're going to see Jake's going to bring his head up a little bit. So you're actually going to get loading from bringing your knees in, and you're going to get loading from your head being up. But everything else is the same. Everything we're doing with tongue on the roof of the mouth, breathing in and out through your nose, is all going to be consistent. And it's going to be something that we're going to do. This is the basis of all we're doing. So every time we do movements a day, you're going to be breathing diaphragmatically. So as you see this, you can still see, and if you have your hand on your stomach, so maybe, don't worry as much about having two hands on your knees, but have one on your stomach. Try to feel that diaphragm raising up and down, and bring your head a little bit off the floor and take your 5 breaths. This is another way we can load our breathing pattern as we raise the feet and put our body in a shortened position. Also notice the head is raised about 3 to 4 centimeters off the ground, and we have the hand on the stomach, so you can feel that hand rise up and fall as you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose with the tongue on the roof of your mouth and mouth closed. And yeah, I see person too. Like I see Ann is using a little pillow. That's fine. You can, if you don't have a lot of range of motion, or like my neck, I can move, but I don't necessarily have as much as if you see, for example, if I go back in this picture, or you'll see later, Tim Anderson's got crazy movement. A lot of people can't move like he can move. So part of it is getting into your body, knowing what's right for you to move, and then original strength it's sort of called good, better, best. Just moving at all is good. It's good for our body. It's nourishing for our body. But as we can be a little bit more exact and better at how we move, we can even improve that. So any movement is good. So the last thing we're going to have you do for your breathing is I'm going to have you stand up, and we're going to do what we call Superman breathing. And Superman breathing is just, your feet are shoulder width, your hands are on your hips. And what we're going to play around here is your tongue placement. Okay. And your tongue placement, we want to see if you feel a difference. So as you do this, you're going to still breathe through your nose. Your mouth's going to stay closed. I want you to do 5 breaths with the tongue on the roof of your mouth. And then I want you to try to do 5 breaths pulling your tongue further back in your mouth. So rolling your tongue back further, more towards the middle of the roof of your mouth. And that can be sort of difficult. It took me a couple of times of doing this original strength to actually get my tongue in the right position. But I just want you to do 5 breaths with the tongue in the normal position, right behind the teeth, and then try to bring it back a little bit. Now, by doing that change in where your tongue is at, anybody feel a difference? You may have felt the ability to bring more air into your lungs by pulling that tongue back further. So you can play around with your tongue position as you do these as well. Okay. So those are some basic breathing things. And a lot of times, like if I've taught my team how to do the breathing, I don't necessarily have to put them on the ground all the time. If they know how to breathe out of their diaphragm and they're doing it good, I might use this Superman position in a warm-up because they're already standing going into their other dynamic movements. Okay, so it might be easier once they know to use that position. But as you teach it, you can use some of the other ones. So as we finish the diaphragmatic breathing, this is another way we can load our breathing pattern as we raise the feet and put our body in a shortened. Can't get this thing to advance the way I want it. But
This is
Tim,
Yep.
There's a question. As they're doing it, should they feel like they're like kind of yawning as well? Something like that to some effect?
Maybe a little bit, and that they're really getting.
Or maybe
deep.
they're just sleepy at this time of the day.
It could be waking up a little bit, but when you sort of go to yawn, you are sort of bringing more air in, so that may make some sense. But really, you want to feel that stomach move because your diaphragm is sort of basically pulling down expanding the lungs, and then coming back up. So what we want to do here is take a second here and retest your mobility. Do your toe touch, do your squat, do your arm movement, and to see how it feels. Okay. See if it feels any looser. See if you can reach a little bit farther or squat a little bit farther. Anybody notice any differences just by changing that breathing? With more loosening up or greater range of motion?
Well, some are already feeling more relaxed. It's like a rather nice feeling.
Yeah, because you really get into that rest and digest mode. So it feeds into each other. And you may find, depending on your body, that one of these resets works better than others. So we're all different. And at higher levels, you can actually even assess that a little bit to see what resets you should concentrate on. But we just want to give you an overview today, right? So we're going to use that breathing is going to be constant throughout. So everything we do today, you want to breathe through your nose, tongue on the roof of your mouth, using that diaphragm. All right. And the second thing we do is head control. So when you think about a baby's head, and Tim Anderson always talks about, with a baby, that head is almost like a built-in gym for that baby to get stronger with, because that head is about 25% of the size of the baby's body and a third of the weight. Okay, so as a baby learns how to move, it's first learning how to control the head. And as we learn how to control the head and use that vestibular system, the baby is also not just learning movement, but that brain is starting to develop. So good movement and head movement and a good vestibular system is good for our brain and keeping a healthy brain. So everything's wired through our head movement. And when we do our head movement, the thing we want to remember is we always lead with our eyes. So if I'm doing a head nod and I'm nodding up to the ceiling, my eyes go to the ceiling first and my head follows. If I'm looking down, my eyes go down and then my head goes down. If I'm going to go side to side, my eyes go to the side first and then the head follows. If I go to the other wall, my eyes come all the way to the other side and then the head follows. Okay, so always think about eyes first. All right. So the first thing we're going to look at, and we can do this in that shortened position, is just a forward and back head nod. Okay, so all you're doing here, and you can either do it laying flat or you can have the legs up, whichever you're more comfortable with. We're going to keep our breathing the same, and all you're going to do is, if I'm laying back, I'm going to look up towards my chest and then bring the head up. Then I'm going to look all the way back and I'll bring my head back. And notice you may not get the same range of motion that Tim does here. But what we want to do is we're going to do a series of 10 of these head nods. And this first one here, we have Jake just laying back. And this is the one video where I actually appear in the video, sort of stressing that eye movement. Here we're going to have Jake do head nods, and I'm going to come in here and actually want to guide the eyes before the head. So Jake's eyes are going to come down, and then he's going to lift his head, and then eyes come all the way back before the head comes back. Eyes go forward, then head goes forward, eyes go back, head goes back. So the eyes always lead the head. When we go side to side here, eyes will come all the way over to the side, all the way over to the other side, and the head turns following the eyes. So you can see Jake's eyes come all the way towards me, and his head comes towards me. Eyes go all the way to the far side, and then his head follows. Here we have 5 head nods forward and back. And so yeah, the bottom video is just the same thing without me in there showing the eyes. So if you're doing with this, your athletes or training somebody, I would recommend, just like I was, get down there and actually maybe use your fingers as a guide. I think it's a really good way to emphasize that position. So take a second here, laying on your back. You can have your knees up or you can have them straight, whichever you're comfortable with. And what you want to do is practice that diaphragmatic breathing. If you're doing that, we'll just do 5 nods up and back. So bring the eyes forward and then your head, eyes back, then head back. And I'll scroll through these cams while you're doing that. And these are actually even things you could do, even say if you're sitting at your computer, you could actually just do them here as well. You could just do head nods anywhere. Okay. Once you've done those 5 up and down, then we want you to go side to side. So eyes go first, then the head, eyes go the other direction, then the head goes. So let's do 5 side to side each way once you've done your forward and back. And a lot of times with these things, fast is not necessarily better. Nice and slow and controlled may be a lot more effective. So be deliberate. Look first, then turn. Look the other way, then turn. Okay. All right. So the next progression of this, we can just change the body position. And we'll actually have you go on. Here we're going to have, we'll have you go either you can sit on your heels like Tim does here. And you can see he gets a good amount of range of motion. Or you can have your hips up a little bit, whichever is comfortable for you. Anything we do, so if your head movements, if they make you feel a little bit nauseous or things, because if your vestibular system's not real sharp, then you can just do the eyes. Start with the eyes. So I could look here and just do the eye movements is the basic lower progression. Okay. Now, as you do this, continue your breathing, and you'll notice on the picture here with Tim, he looks over his shoulder. So if you have good mobility, and you can even feel free to let the shoulders rotate. Let the shoulder go with your body, okay, as you look over each shoulder. Okay. But as we do that, one thing you may want to watch is I don't want to bring that chin to the shoulder. I want to bring that chin up over the shoulder. I want to look up over my shoulder, and then eyes come here, then I'm up over the shoulder. So I'm not looking down. I'm bringing that up and over. All right. And I see everybody's doing that pretty well. And you can also do the forward and back head nods in that position as well. So maybe do about 5 side to side, 5 up and down. Again, don't feel like you have to race through this. Once you've done that, then what we want to do is we want to take our mobility break and we want to test our mobility. So once you do the 5 forward and back nods, 5 side to side, touch your toes, check your shoulder mobility, and check that overhead squat test. See how it feels. Okay. Anybody notice a difference just from how it feels, your range of motion, just doing those basic head nods combined with that breathing? Hopefully you're getting a little bit more depth. Maybe you're getting a little bit more freedom of movement. So once we learn how to control the head, that baby learns how to control the head, then it learns how to roll. So how to roll from, if the baby's on its stomach, how to turn the head and roll to the back, or how to go from the back to the stomach. Okay. And what we're getting here in the rolling is we're really starting to work and help really help the health of the spine and to connect your body together. So you connect opposite shoulder and hip, helps your vertebrae. For me, I really notice a difference with thoracic mobility as I rotate. Another nice thing about rolling is if you're rolling on the ground, you have a lot of your body in contact with that ground. And they've done research looking at the importance of touch. With babies, they've fed the babies the same amount, but the ones that don't get held tend to have symptoms of malnourishment. So there's something about that physical contact and touch that is really healthy for our bodies. So especially now that we're in this COVID-19 where it's not good to hug anybody, rolling on the floor gives our body some stimulation, tactile stimulation that can really sort of help our health. So when we're rolling, we're really helping our body that way as well. So what we're going to show you here is a series of 3 different rolls that you can do, connecting the body and really working on that spine and thoracic mobility. Okay. So the first one we're going to do is called the egg roll. And you can sort of see Tim Anderson here. You're sort of in that shortened position. Okay. We're going to look. It's basically where your eyes go first, the head follows, and then the body is going to follow with that. And we'll show you that on the video. And you can see here, Tim's got a lot of mobility. He can look under. Once he turns, he can look under. And you'll see Jake doing it a little bit here as he goes. So we'll show you the video here to give you a little bit better idea than these still pictures. But it's eyes first, then the head, then the rest of the body. Here we're doing the egg roll, which is one of our basic rolls, and you're starting in the shortened position with your knees up, hands on the knees. And what you're seeing here is you're leading with the eyes. So the eyes look first and then the body follows. You look all the way over, pulling the body through, and you actually look underneath a little bit. So now you look all the way to the other way. It's going to pull the body through following the head, and you're doing your diaphragmatic breathing into the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth, leading with the eyes, then the head, and then the rest of the body. So as you try these things, they may not always feel the smoothest the first time you do it. It may be a little bit choppy as you do that. You may actually sometimes have to cheat a little bit with your elbow to get yourself pushed over. But as you get more practice, you're going to feel where just moving that head is going to allow the rest of your body to follow. And again, play with the tempo. It's easy to try to rush these things, but sometimes steady and slow is a more powerful and impactful movement. But give it a try. Maybe do 3 each side and see what it feels like to do that egg roll. And while we're doing this, we're keeping that same diaphragmatic breathing. So everything we've talked about from the beginning, tongue placement on the roof of the mouth closed, breathing in and out through the nose, eyes, then head, and then body. And we'll be doing that throughout all our rolls, sort of follow that same sequence. All right. Here we're doing the egg. Now, here's a movement that you're probably familiar with and may have done a variation of that gives us some good hip mobility. And it's just your basic windshield wiper. And we're going to show you probably actually sort of 4 variations here. But what we can do is we're basically just keeping either the feet on the ground or the feet in the air with the knees up. And you're trying to keep your shoulders in contact with the ground, rotating the knees as far to the sides as you can. Now, the big thing here is if you don't have great range of motion, you may not be able to bring the knees all the way to the ground like Tim Anderson has here. Okay. If this shoulder, the side shoulder raises up, okay, then your range of motion is too far. So try to keep the shoulder down, even if that means you can't bring the legs all the way over. Okay. So in this video, Jake's going to demonstrate 4 variations. The first variation you see here is the simplest with the feet on the ground. Okay. Second variation, the knee, have the knees up and the feet will be up. Okay. And then the third one, you'll see Jake will alternate straightening out one leg. Okay. It's basically the top leg always straightens out. And then our final 4th variation is going to be both legs straight. And you'll see them here in this video. Here's the windshield wiper variations, and we're just starting with a very basic hip movement as a hip roll. All we're doing here is keeping the feet flat on the ground, knees going side to side. Our next step up is just going to bring the feet up as you go side to side. Again, we want to keep the shoulders down. As we're doing this, we're keeping our good diaphragmatic breathing, so we're breathing in through the nose with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now, our next level up here is going to be the top leg is going to be straight. It's going to come over. Still trying to keep our shoulders down. As we get to the middle, we switch. So the top leg comes over, come to the middle, switch legs as we do that windshield wiper movement. Then we're going to sort of smooth that out a little bit more as you go. We want to get as much range of motion to the side as we can without pulling those shoulders up. Here's our toughest variation where we're doing 2 legs down to the side. Here's a windshield wiper. So as you're doing that, pay attention to the shoulder staying in contact with the ground. And you need to sort of see, as you try those different variations, anywhere at any point that the shoulders start lifting up, shorten your range of motion or go back in your progression. Because like everything we do in exercise is progression.
Tim, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Does the head stay in front as you do the windshield wiper?
The head can just stay stable. So on these lower body rotations, and what we're doing here is we're really getting some good hip mobility as well as some lower back rotation. Okay, so where the head gets involved and where it becomes more important is when we do our upper body rolls and partial rolls that we're going to show you in a second. So anytime we're just doing more the lower body, you can just sort of be comfortable with your head. So again, like if someone has any head tightness and maybe it's sort of hard to keep all the way back, it's perfectly fine to have a little pillow underneath there to put your head in a comfortable position. Okay. So take a minute here and go through those 4 variations, maybe do like 2 to each side with the feet on the ground, then 2 with the feet up in the air, and then we'll have you do 2 more each way with the single leg, that top leg coming across. And then if you can, try to do the 2-leg windshield wiper, and just mind, be sensitive to how you feel the shoulders moving, and just stay in that range of motion without letting your shoulders raise up. And again, probably the good thing here is taking it nice and steady, better than trying to rush through this. So I'll give you a second to sort of play with those 4 variations before we move on. Here's a wind. So as we do those, remember your breathing is going to be the same, because our diaphragmatic breathing is our reset within the resets. As you're finishing up, I'll sort of explain what we're going to do next. The next thing we can do is upper and lower body half rolls. And I think, if you're looking at especially things that maybe do after a practice or in a stretching routine, these are some great ways to sort of stretch and sort of build that thoracic mobility. And you can do this either upper or lower body. Here are pictures sort of showing the upper body, and we can go from on our back or on our stomach, and we'll show you both options here in the video. And you're going to do using your same breathing, and we just want to go as far as you feel comfortable. So as you see on the video here, we're going to have you start with the legs, because the legs are the easiest. So Jake's going to basically raise his leg up over as far as he can, twisting his body, keeping his shoulders on the ground. If that opposite shoulder starts raising up, then I need to bring my leg back and keep myself stable on the ground. With the upper body, this is where the head position comes in. You can just sort of relax with the lower body. But when I'm doing that upper body partial roll, what I'm doing is, if I'm going to reach towards my wall this way, my eyes go first, my head goes first, then my arm reaches over. Okay, so it's eyes, head, arm when we do the upper body. So we'll show you really quick. This is what it'll look like just doing one of these sort of stretches each way. And what I recommend is, as you stretch up and over, take a couple seconds, maybe take 2, 3, 4 diaphragmatic breaths, and feel as you breathe if you can actually increase those stretches. A lot of times your body will sort of release a little bit as you do that breathing. The breathing works very well with these to increase the stretch. But you can sort of see here what it's going to look like. Here are some partial rolls using your legs and your arms. This is a lower body partial roll. You're trying to keep your shoulder blades on the ground as you reach your leg over and rotate. You're going to be breathing diaphragmatically in and out through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. As you reach over, reach as far as you can, take a couple breaths and see if you can sink that in a little bit deeper. Now we're going to see this come back, and we're actually going to go with the upper body. So you're going to look first the direction you're going to reach. Here we're going to try to keep the hips on the ground as we rotate with the spine. This is really great for thoracic mobility. Here we're going to do the other side, just so we do each evenly. So let's take a second here, do 1 or 2 each way, so at least 1 with each leg. When you do your leg, try to take 3 breaths, maybe even go a little bit further as you do those breaths. Then come back the other way, take a couple breaths, okay, increasing that rotation. And then try the upper body. So when you do the upper body, look, turn the head, and then reach across. And if you're anything like me, your upper body is not nearly as mobile with the spine as your lower body. So I'll give you a second to do that.
Tim,
Yep.
we just hit the 60-minute mark, just so that you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
Sounds good.
No rush.
Okay. my clock where I can see it. I think we're doing good progress. We'll get through.
You know what? They're actually working out an appetite for lunch.
Yeah, it's all part of the plan.
Yeah, they're gonna have a great lunch late in a while.
And the lunch is a great time to do like a lot of your calories because you'll be up all day, burning them off after that. So, right. So once you've got a chance to do that on your back, we're gonna do the same thing laying on your stomach. So we'll have you watch this and then we'll have you try it. So here, the leg is pretty easy. You're just bringing that leg up and over, and we're trying to keep the shoulders down on the ground. But sometimes it's a little bit harder to keep the hips on is when you do so the upper body, again, we're looking first. So if I'm going to try to rotate this direction, first thing I'm going to do is my eyes are going to go that direction. Then the head's going to be like looking over my shoulder. And then we're just going to have you lead with the elbow. Lead with the elbow, rotating as far as you can, still keeping your hips on the ground. So this will give you a little bit better idea of what that looks like. Here are our partial rolls as you lay on your stomach. This one first is using our upper body. And what you're doing is trying to keep the hips on the ground. You're going to look the direction you're going to lift up. So you're leading with your elbow as you rotate. And then with the lower body here, trying to keep the shoulders on the ground, you're just trying to bring that foot over as far as you can. Breathing diaphragmatically as we do this. Take a couple breaths and see if you can rotate a little bit more. These are great exercises and stretches for your thoracic mobility. So take a second on that. And now as you do this, pay attention to what's happening with, if I'm doing the upper body, so I'm sort of watching Johnny do it there a little bit. Don't let that hip raise up. When I rotate, you can do sort of half rolls, but if we want to do more of a stretch, maybe try to keep those hips on the ground, right? You can do half to a side, or you can do, but ideally just doing this is just doing more of a stretch.
Tim, these movements are without the help or benefit of momentum, right? They have to do this in control.
Yeah, you want to do it in control. The next thing we're going to show is the actual segmental roll, and that's where you don't want to use momentum for that for sure. You're going to be doing sort of each part of your body will lead you to the next part.
So jerks are not allowed. Pardon my language. Jerking is not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. To all the coaches, this is the only best time to use the phrase jerks are not allowed.
And that's something, as you sort of show your teams and your athletes this, you may have to slow them down. Okay, because a lot of people want to do things fast, but sometimes doing things fast, especially if you're doing something here to really loosen up the spine and doing it more of a stretch for range of motion, we got to be slower and deliberate with that. And you'll see some things here when we get into crawling. People want to crawl fast, but crawling can actually be a lot tougher if you do it slower. Here are some partial rolls using your legs as you lay on your stomach and your arms. So here's our full roll. So we're going to show you the lower body and the upper body. So we don't have to worry about the head as much in the lower body segmental roll. And it's called a segmental roll because we're transferring that roll up the body. So the first thing you're going to see here is the leg is going to come over. The leg's going to start pulling the hips. The hips will pull the torso, and then that'll bring the head over. So it's almost like you'll see here, if Jake does it right, the body just sort of flops over as you do this. And the lower body is a little bit easier to do, so that's why we'll have you do it first. Here's a lower body segmental roll. You're going to use the weight of the leg to pull the hip over. The hip pulls the upper body, and then coming back, using that leg to pull the hip and the upper body. Now, as you do these rolls, our breathing is the same, diaphragmatically in through the nose and with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. Here's a lower body segmental roll. You're going to use the weight of, so give that a try. You may need a little bit more space, and you may roll off your mat depending. But what you want to do is use the weight of that leg, then through the hip, then let your upper body just sort of flop over. And again, some of these things, it takes some practice to sort of get good at sort of letting the body follow through those sequences.
Tim, just going back, with the elbow roll, do you have to move with the head first?
Yeah, so when we go back looking at that upper body stretch, anytime we do the upper body, and we're going to, after we, the next thing we're going to show you is the upper body segmental roll. The upper body ones are where the head's key. That's where the eyes go first, then the head, then the body. With the lower body and the legs here, we're sort of removed from their upper body. So the head isn't as important there because it's sort of the last thing to fall, roll over.
Okay. So in general, any upper body rolls, it starts with the head.
Yeah, it starts with the eyes and then the head and then
Okay.
then the arms and then goes down the rest of the body.
Okay, eyes and then the head. Okay.
Yep, eyes always go first. Just like when we got back to our basic head nods, eyes went to the ceiling, head went to the ceiling, eyes went to the floor, head goes to the floor. We did our side-to-side nods. Eyes went to the wall, head goes to the wall. Eyes go the opposite way all the way, then the head comes through. So the same principles apply when we're doing this upper body. And that's what you'll sort of see on this bottom video here. Okay. So that's why we turned Jake around on here and videotape from the other side. Here's the upper body segmental roll. What you're going to do here is you're going to look first and then reach over. So as you go backwards, you look back over, lead with the elbow, and as you go, you look, and then your upper body pulls the hips pull the legs. Looking back over, leading with the elbow, the shoulder leads the hips pull the lower body over. So you can sort of see it. Jake's not really smooth on that yet, but you can see where he flopped over. So upper body probably takes a little bit more practice than the lower body. On all these, when you're doing rolls, it's probably best, depending on, like my shoulders aren't really great as far as reaching overhead, but you want to have your arms up because you're rolling over and you don't want that arm getting in the way. So keep your hands up out of the way as you sort of roll through. So take a second here to try those upper body rolls, try one or two each way. And we don't want to be rolling as a full unit. You want the head, then the shoulder, then the hip, then the legs sort of falling through as you go through there. So give that a little bit of a try. Here's the upper. Once you've done one or two of those, what we want you to do next is actually just do your mobility test again. See what it feels like to touch your toes. See what it feels like to do your overhead squat and what it feels like to do your shoulder mobility test. And see if you have any changes. If you do a pre-post test on this, just sort of doing some rotation, that might be one that you really feel a difference on these rolls because that's what we're really sort of targeting. So I'll give you a couple seconds to do those mobility tests and check and see how it compares to how you moved and felt before. Again, just don't always just key in on the depth. Think about how it feels. If it feels different than what you were doing before, that's progress. If it feels looser, then that's working for you. All right, so as you finish that up, next thing we're going to look at is rocking. So once the baby has started to develop that control of their body through rolling from the back to the front and front to the back, then usually what happens is the baby starts building up strength to push themselves up into a a rocking position, and they actually sort of rock back and do some rocking before they actually get strong enough to actually go into any crawling movements. Okay, so in our rocking, we're continuing to stimulate that vestibular system. We're starting to integrate the joints. So we're getting the hips and the shoulders moving. This is sort of a start to some gentle strength training because you're pushing yourself up. For me, you're getting the hips and the shoulders tied together. And even that rocking movement is sort of it sort of makes you feel good and calms you down. Sometimes you'll see people that are really, if you have an athlete that has attention deficit disorder, sometimes they'll sit there and they'll rock because that calms them down. So there is a calming effect like your breathing with this as well. So first things we want to look at is we want to get you in the proper body position. So you'll be on your hands and knees. So this is always good where you have your mats. Your eyes are going to be on the horizon. So you're going to be looking up straight forward. And we want to keep a good, strong back. So your back is going to be tight. And then you're just rocking back over your hips back over your feet. And then you're rocking forward, keeping that good, tight back and head up as you rock forward. Now, depending on your capability, how far you rock back and how far you go forward depends on your body. Now, if you go too far forward or you go too far back and you start losing that back position, not good and tight, then you should shorten it up a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do is your breathing is going to be the same. Tongue on the roof of the mouth, in and out through the nose, mouth shut as you rock back and forth. So just sort of looking at Jake showing you the rock here. You can see the eyes are going forward. This is our standard rock on all fours in your hands and knees. You're just rocking back over your heels, keeping eyes up on the horizon, good tight back. So your chest is up a little bit and you're breathing through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth, doing that diaphragmatic breathing as we rock forward and back. So really watch that back position. Keep the eyes up. Maybe just sort of do 3 to 5 rocks up and back. And for me, I've had shoulder issues. So these rocks and a couple variations we're going to show you here in a couple slides really can help, especially with shoulder impingements, help loosen up those shoulders a little bit. And we'll teach you how to play around a little bit with the weight you put on each shoulder that can help you rehab that as well. So take a second and do those rocks. Big thing, keep the eyes on the horizon so they're staying nice and steady, and watch, keep that back in good position depending on your proper range of motion. Because remember, we're working on a good, better, best system. Any movement's good, but if we can keep that back in good position and eyes on the horizon as we do our diaphragmatic breathing and get good and better range of motion, then that's even better. Let's take you through a couple variations. One thing you can do here is what's called a commando rock. And basically what you see here is only thing we're changing is instead of being on our hands, we're on our forearms. Okay, so we're shortening that up a little bit. And you may feel that this changes your range of motion a little bit as you play around with this. So we'll show you the video here of Jake doing the commando rock. This is going to be your commando rock. What you want to do is you're on your forearms. You're going to rock back over your heels, keeping your back nice and straight, chest up, eyes looking forward on the horizon, breathing through your nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth as you breathe diaphragmatically, trying to go back and forth with your heels and up towards your hands. So you can really see on the video, Jake does a great job of keeping his eyes looking at these dumbbells. And he keeps the back nice and tight. Doesn't necessarily have as much range of motion, but it's a little bit different feel in that commando rock position. So give that a little try, maybe do 5 or so rocks back and forth. And as you do this, sometimes you have to change the positioning of where your hands are in relation to your shoulders, or on this one, how far your elbows are. sort of find that sweet spot to give you that greatest range of motion. Like if my elbows are too far forward, that's going to keep me from being able to rock back as far. So you got to sort of find your best spot as you go. This is now these two that we're going to show you next are two new ones that I've actually started picking up and that are helping me with my shoulder problems. And these are actually out of a new original strength book that's actually original strength for resets for your shoulders. So the first one we're going to see here, you're looking at straight on here, is you can even do one arm rocks, but the more gentle version here is rocking with your weight on one side and then coming back and then putting more weight on the other hand. So if you have some shoulders that you're trying to build them up a little bit, it's a great way to do a gentle rehab. So we'll sort of show you. The side-to-side rock is a great variation of rocking to sort of help with some shoulder strengthening and rehabilitation. All you're doing here is eyes are up on the horizon, good back position, and all you're doing as you're rocking forward is you're coming over and putting your weight on that one side. So it's giving you a little bit more work on the one side to help strengthen that. Breathing is the same, diaphragmatically, in and out through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth, as you just come over and place weight a little bit more on the side you're rocking to. So you can really see on that how Jake sort of emphasizes that one side. This other variation that's good is a circle rock. So instead of going straight back, you're going to go sort of in a circular oval. And this is a great way to sort of work the shoulder blade and to take that shoulder through a full range, full rotation there. So it really feels, I find it feels really good on my shoulders when I'm trying to rehab. There's another rocking variation that's great for the shoulders. It's the circle rock. So you're just, instead of rotating to one side and doing the side to side, you're sort of going in a circular pattern, almost like an oval. As you rock forward, roll over to the side, and then roll back to your hips, breathing through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth, head up high on the horizon, back nice and tight. Here's another. So as you do these things, you can change them up. Like Jake here on the video is circling to one side, then circling back. When I do these in my daily movement routine, I'll do 5 circles in one direction and then I'll reverse the direction. So you can do it either way. A lot of original strength is just about moving. So it's about moving and using those 3 pillars. So the diaphragmatic breathing, activating the vestibular system, and contralateral movement. If you do any of those 3 things, you're doing something original strength. But they want you to move and even to play. Okay. Also play with your tempo. Okay. Faster is not always better. Slow and controlled can be very effective. All right. So let you try out those a little bit, and then last couple variations. I think we have the side-to-side rock. Another rocking is our adductor rock, and this is one I really like, and I think it's a really good. I probably would use it with a team as part of a dynamic warm-up, especially if I'm in the weight room and maybe I'm doing the leg day, maybe I'm doing lateral movement. Is an adductor rock. So we have both views here. The side view is a little bit easier to see. All you're doing is you're taking one leg out to the side and you're going to be rocking back and forth. And it does a great job of stretching in and moving that adductor. This is your adductor rock, which is a great variation to help you stretch out your adductors. Eyes are up on the horizon, back's nice and tight, your leg is out to the side as you rock back and forth. When you rock back, you'll feel that stretch. Do each side evenly, breathing into the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth as you do your diaphragmatic breathing, and just try to get that full range of motion as you rock back and forth. Now you can't see it as much from the head on, and that's why we sort of put the side here, but that leg is straight out to the side. It's not at a 45 or laying back. Here's that adductor rock from the side. Notice the legs straight out as you rock forward and back, stretching out that adductor. Head is up, eyes are up, back is nice and tight, breathing into the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. So with that, you know, as you do these different rocks, your range of motions may change depending on what feels comfortable in your body. So again, if you feel your back getting out of that nice, good, tight position, shorten up your range of motion. Don't feel like you have to go too far. And then this is your adductor rock, which is a side. Now, the last two things I wanted to show you are you can also use these rocks to really work your feet. Okay? And if you remember from your anatomy class, you have a lot of bones that are in your feet. And a lot of times with our shoes, as we've made better and better shoes, they've protected our feet, and sometimes the mobility and the strength of the muscles in the feet actually get reduced due to our footwear. So what we can do is we can do this rocking out of two positions here. We can do it plantar flex with our toes back or dorsiflex with our toes tucked in. And what you're going to see in these videos is we can do them just in a straight plantar flex, or we can actually bring these ankles out, or we can angle the ankles in. So we can get a lot of different mobility in that ankle joint. And if you're like me and your ankles don't move really well, we can use our other foot to sort of spot and move that. So you'll see that here in this video. This is some plantar flex rocking variations. You can do just normal rocking in a plantar flex position with the toes pointed out. But we can do some things to really work the feet and the ankles by here. We're going to do first with the ankles pointed out, and then you're going to see a couple where we turn the ankles in, just working a little bit different and really stretching out those feet. Now, the regular rocks can be the same, head position, back position, and rocking back and forth in a breathing. But we can also do a self-assist. So you can do this and you can pull in on your ankle with your other foot to really work on that, especially if you have any sort of mobility limitations. And then the other option is pushing out on the ankle. So we can do the in and out without any assistance and with assistance to help work that foot and ankle mobility. And we can do the same thing here in our dorsiflex position. Now, if you're like me, there's a little bit of difference in range of motion. I can rock back further in a plantar flex position than I can in dorsiflex. But people with really good mobility that haven't had their hips replaced may be able to sit back better on both. But this gives you and shows you through those different variations as well. Here is our dorsiflex rock, where we put the feet in the dorsiflex position, pulling those toes under. And again, you can do this as a normal rock back and forth with this foot position, or we can really work on the ankle and the feet mobility by angling the ankles in as we rock back and forth, or angling the ankles out from that dorsiflex position. Okay? Everything else is the same. Good back position, eyes on the horizon, diaphragmatic breathing like we normally do in the rocking. And we can also do our assist. So we can give a little bit of push on the outside as we rock forward in the dorsiflex position. And we can bring that foot over and pull that ankle in, really to work that flexibility and mobility of the feet and the ankles. Excellent way to work the feet and the ankles. So, and a side note on this, while you guys play around with the rocking, just sort of try both foot positions, plantar flex, dorsiflex, ankles in, ankles out, play around with the self-assist. But when you look at corrective exercise and you look at limitations and movement dysfunction, a lot of it can go back to ankle mobility and actually a reduction in dorsiflexion. If you can't bring that toe back towards your heel, like in a squat, that's where you see the heels come off the ground because you're too tight there. If you can see a lot of things like the toes flattening or rolling in an overhead squat test. A lot of those things come back to ankle and foot mobility. So if we can regain some of that movement in our feet, we can really help our movement. So take a second and I'll let you finish up with that before we show you our last rocking variation, which is one that I really, really like. It helps me with my ankle mobility as well, in addition to this one. This is some plantar flex rock. So the last rock we're going to show you is, when they teach it in original strength, they teach it as a Lego rock, but it's actually, and they teach it as a diagonal pattern. I like using it what I call the modified Lego rock, and it's sort of a good lead in to crawling. And this one is, you're basically going to have your knee on the ground, and what you're going to do is you're going to bring your other foot up to right in front of your knee, and then you're going to actually sort of walk your hands forward as you bring this knee down to the ground. And that's what you're going to see here in the video. This is what I call the modified Lego rock, and it's great for your ankle and foot movement. What you're doing is you're putting that foot right in front of the knee, and you're sort of doing a semi-crawl as you walk your hands forward and you bring that knee down. So you see this one here, foot is front of the knee comes down as you sort of walk your hands forward, head still up, back is nice and tight, and are doing our diaphragmatic breathing. So give you a chance to do a couple of those and feel what that feels like. It's also good for your hip flexor as well. So the big thing is, and you sometimes have to play around with your foot position, but I like, usually if you put your heel in front of your knee, it usually gets you in about the right place. And then you sort of walk forward and bring that knee down to the ground and then come back. And again, you can do this where you alternate, or you can do it, I like to do 5 each side. Usually what I do in my daily movement routine is I'll do 5 to 10 adductor rocks on one side. Then I'll bring that leg that I have sticking out to the side, I'll bring it up into my modified Lego rock and go right into that. And then I'll switch sides, doing my other side on the adduction. And then I'll finish it with the Lego rock. So that takes us through the rocking. So now what we want to do is retest your mobility. This is what I call, do your toe touch, do your overhead squat, and your shoulder mobility, and see how those have changed, how they feel, and what your range of motion are. All right. As you're doing that, I'll just sort of move us forward here. The last thing we're looking at is, once the baby's learned how to rock, then it starts to move around, and actually crawling and actually walking is a reset. So when we look at crawling, what we're really doing is tying that opposite arm, opposite leg, and we're getting that, we're connecting what we call connecting the X. Opposite shoulder, opposite hip, both sides. Anytime we do anything that goes across the body, then we're actually going to use across the hemispheres in the brain. But we're really sort of working and moving this thing together, tightening up that nervous system, getting the body to work a little bit stronger. We're going to show you some crawling variations here. You may not be able to do them where you're at because you need a little bit of space, but forward and backward crawls, especially backward crawls, again, are very good for building up the shoulders. So the first thing we're going to do here is show you like the speed skater and the bird dog. And you might be familiar with the bird dog from yoga. But basically, again, our same eye position, good tight back. The speed skater, the legs coming back, and the opposite arm is coming back. Just like you see that speed skater in the Olympics. The bird dog, all it is, instead of this arm coming back, is it's coming straight forward. And in the video here, what you'll see, and what I was taught by Piers, he is the one that actually does some of the original strength training that has been done in the Philippines. He sort of leads that, is when you do the bird dog, you keep the eyes on the horizon. So you'll see Jake reach forward here, and it's like when you reach forward, it's like you're trying to shake a hand. When the leg comes back, it's like he's trying to kick this back. And then when you do the ice skater, and Jake doesn't do it too well on this one, but the way I was taught on the ice skater is here, the hand points back and then the toe points back. So just two little technique points on that. But this is what it looks like to do both those variations here with the eyes on the horizon, good back position, and diaphragmatic breathing. Here are the bird dog and ice skater movements. They're great for your lower back as well as preparing the shoulders for crawling. Here in this bird dog, you're kicking straight back with that heel as you reach forward with the opposite arm. Eyes are straight forward as the head is up, back is nice and tight. Now we're moving into that ice skater where instead of reaching forward, you're reaching back with the opposite arm. And you'll notice we're going to do the same breathing we have been doing diaphragmatically into the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. Here are the bird dog and ice skater. So a big thing you want to think about when we're doing these movements is we're working posterior chain. We're working the lower back and glutes and hips, right? So we're working the back of the body. We'll show you a variation to work more of the abs in the front with the gate bug and dead bug here in a second. I'll give you a second to try out both of those. And again, these are things that to really work on strengthening that lower back and even strengthening your shoulders, doing them slow increases the intensity. So don't rush your way through that. So I'll give you a second to give those a try. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to flip you over and hit the anterior side. So our head position is going to be straight forward. Eyes on the horizon, breathing in through the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. As you do that. And what you can do with these things is you can do total number of repetitions, or you can do these things for time. Okay? You know, do a minute of these ice skaters nice and slow, and you'll be surprised at how much it makes you work. And one thing I've discovered when I've been teaching athletes, even here in North Carolina, where I'm supposed to be at a Division II, sort of second level down, NCAA, athletes always surprise me with how weak their cores are. And that's what's tying their body together. So doing things like this, doing our planks, side planks, front planks, I usually find that our athletes can really benefit from going back to those basics. Okay. So the next thing we're look at is that hit our posterior chain, doing these on our anterior side or looking at that. And anytime, and you may have noticed this when you were doing that shortened position breathing, when you tuck your chin, if you notice that you tuck your chin, it reflexively causes you to tighten your abdominals. So in this movement, the dead bug is basically just going to be hands in the air, feet in the air, opposite arm, opposite leg, straighten out. But we want to go into that chin tucked, head off the ground position. Try to pull your hips a little bit off the ground as you do this. This is a dead bug exercise, which is a great abdominal exercise. You start with both hands and both feet straight up, head off the ground a little bit, and hips pulled up, and you're just going to extend with the opposite arm, opposite leg, breathing diaphragmatically. All right. The second movement is what we call the gate bug. So like when I walk, I'm swinging my arms back. So instead of having the dead bug where I'm coming here, I'm starting hands and feet here. I'm just bringing opposite arms coming down. So it's more like I'm walking, and that's why they call it the gate bug. And this one is not as at least for me, it wasn't as natural. I really had to think about it to be coordinated and practice it quite a while to get that opposite arm, opposite leg movement with the arm coming down, but it's referred to the gate bug. We'll get this video rolling. This abdominal exercise is called the gate bug. You start with both hands up and legs up, and you're going to go opposite arm, opposite leg down, arm coming down to the side, leg coming down to the side, just like you're walking. So if you want to take a second and try both of those, just Starting position's the same, feet straight up, arms straight up. Try to tuck that chin, still doing your diaphragmatic breathing. If you can, try to pull your hips off the ground a little bit. That's going to make it a little bit tougher and engage your abdominals a little bit more. Maybe do like 2 or 3 each side with that dead bug, and then try to drop that arm down in. You guys are looking a lot more natural than I was. I ended up trying to do the same leg, same arm, and it was a mess for the first couple times I was doing it. So you guys are already passing me up. But that's a good one to include to sort of do that contralateral movement and to be working our anterior musculature. Our standard movement. So the first thing you're going to do with your crawling, we're doing our diaphragmatic breathing. Eyes are on the horizon, back is nice and tight. And the first movement we're doing is what we call the baby crawl. So the baby crawl, and you might be limited by your space. So maybe we'll just sort of watch these, is you're on your hands and knees and your opposite arm, opposite leg. And basically what you're doing, the baby crawl, is your knees are staying in contact with the ground. So this is your gentlest one. So it's a great starting point for anybody. You know, sometimes depending on your surface, here we have a nice turf surface. It's not too bad. But sometimes I'll even use I got the volleyball coach at Barton give me some knee pads and I'll use them. But here's actually your crawl. And what you'll see here is Jason will crawl down forward, opposite arm, opposite leg. And here, slow is probably better. Slow is going to challenge you because if you go slow and you're sort of holding yourself in position, you have to get your body to sort of stabilize. If you go quick, you're not really stabilizing and you're not really working as well. And you'll also see here, Jason go back, opposite arm, opposite leg, and backward crawling is, again, it's excellent for the shoulders, building up the your movement of your shoulder blades and really, sorry, how's that? This is the baby crawl, which is your basic crawl where you're on your hands and knees, going nice and slow. Actually, slower is actually a little bit more difficult because you actually have to stabilize more. You want to have the head up, eyes on the horizon, back nice and tight. And what you're doing here is you're doing your diaphragmatic breathing in and out to the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now, as you go backwards, it really starts working those shoulders and training that scapula to get stronger as you push backwards. So it's excellent shoulder movement. So if you have the space, you can give them a try. Otherwise, you can sort of save that to try later. But there's actually sort of 3 levels of this. This is your basic level. And then the next one that's a little bit more difficult, this is what's called our leopard crawl. And this is where you can sort of see on Tim's picture here, the head is in the same position, the back is nice and tight. The only difference is you'll see the knees are slightly off the ground. Okay, so this increases the challenge, but when you're talking original strength does not use a bear crawl. And that's because of your traditional bear crawl, your butt is up in the air. In original strength, we want to keep the shoulders and the hips at the same level. So that's one thing that as your athletes start doing these more advanced crawls and you lift the knees up, you got to keep the hips in the right position and keep the hips low. So the breathing is all the same. You'll see here as Jake does it, he's going to have his knees off the ground, still doing that. We want to do that contralateral movement. So opposite arm, opposite leg. And sometimes you got to really work with people because they want to do same arm, same leg. But eventually this is the way we learn how to move. So pretty quickly people come back to our sort of default moving as they go. This is the leopard crawl where we bring the knees slightly off the ground. Hips are at shoulder height or lower. And we're just doing the opposite arm, opposite leg as we do the contralateral cross crawl. Head is up, eyes are on the horizon, back is nice and tight. As you come backwards, you're really working the shoulders and building up that scapular mobility and strength as we do our normal diaphragmatic breathing, breathing into the nose, tongue on the roof of the mouth. And then our last sort of crawling variation is actually going to be looking at what we call the Spider-Man crawl. And the Spider-Man crawl is basically increasing our hip mobility. So it's sort of like if you think about the Spider-Man stretch, where you bring your knee outside your elbow. Okay, that's what we're looking at doing here. Jake isn't great at it. He's a lot better than I am because I don't have that mobility with my hips anymore. But we're still trying to keep the hips down as we increase that range of motion and to keep the knees off the ground as we do this Spider-Man crawl. Here's the Spider-Man crawl, which gives us a lot more hip mobility as we bring the knees outside the elbows. Hips still stay lower than the shoulders. Eyes still stay on the horizon. We're still doing our diaphragmatic breathing. We can backwards. As we do that, we still keep the knees outside the elbows, hips low, and we're working on that opposite hand, opposite legs. We're getting that contralateral crawling motion. So especially the backwards really good, and you may have to build up to that. You also have to watch your range of motion. Don't try to overdo it and get the knees up too far. That'll mess up your crawl. Last one we want to show you here, and one that I didn't do a video of that's really good for the shoulders, is you actually do lateral crawling, going sideways. And when you do that, it's basically hands together, hands apart, feet together, feet apart. But that one's probably one you can Google and find. But here's one you can do in a limited space, and it's called an axis crawl. So you'll notice we put the dumbbell there as a visual for where he's keeping his belly button. This is the axis crawl, and it's great for doing in a small space. We're going to use that dumbbell as a reference point. It's basically positioned, and that way you're sort of rotating around that, keeping your belly button over the dumbbell, and you're just going back and forth, opposite arm, opposite leg, doing our good crawling, hips staying low, eyes on the horizon as we crawl back and forth. So that's a good one to play with in a limited space. And then the last, I think it's the last movement I want to show you. Here's the spider. You can also do marching and cross crawling, which is another good thing you can do pretty much in any space. And one thing to mention, anytime, like you can see here in this picture, when we go opposite knee and we cross the center of the body, that connects the brain. Okay, that allows us to go from right hemisphere to left hemisphere in our brain as we crisscross back and forth, which is another great thing that stimulates our brain and our health. So in this video, you're going to see a couple different options, and it depends on your range of motion. First thing Jake's going to show you is a basic march. The arms are just going contralateral, and then he's going to do a hand touch to the opposite knee. Then you can actually go elbow. Now, I don't have the range of motion to get my elbow and knee together, but you can try to get as close as you can. And then the last one is you can really accentuate and come across with a large arm movement. So that's what you'll sort of see Jake take through a progression here, about 2 on each leg. Here are some variations of the march, basically opposite arm, opposite leg, just a basic march. Then we can add in the cross pattern, so you're crossing your body and touching each knee. We can add in some more range of motion by going elbow to knee, and we can also go very big and get a lot of shoulder mobility in this in a big pattern. Still doing our diaphragmatic breathing, but when we cross the center of the body, we're crossing hemispheres in the brain. So that's another good one you can do pretty much anywhere. And you know, even if you think about, you know, you're at the office, so like Coach Mike is sitting there at UMac, you know, and he's stuck in his office chair. If he's there all day, he can just stand up, do a couple of these, do a couple head nods, you know, and sort of freshen himself up. So that takes us through these basic resets.
Here
So
are-
we just want to, if you've been doing those, we just want to retest your movement, seeing, if you're able to do some of those crawls, retest and see if the crawls made some difference. But that takes us through all our basic resets. And I think that even gives me about 10 minutes if you have any questions. What I'll do as you're sort of testing there, we don't have time. There's a couple things in here that actually go through, you can do like 3-minute movements, but I want to bring it up here to where you have, this is the original strength. So originalstrength.net can give you more information, or if you just Google original strength, you can find a lot of things. Tim Anderson has a lot of stuff on YouTube. So if you Google movement snacks, he's got some great stuff. He's got a blog, just some very simple movements that are very powerful. So hopefully you were able to experience some of that today, and hopefully you felt a difference. So if you have any questions, I got some time for that. Although it's getting pretty close to you guys' noon time, so you're probably thinking about what you're going to be eating.
A great time, Coach Tim. It was a really great session, and I'm sure a lot of our coaches do have questions. Si Ma'am Ann, Coach Ann, are these OS exercises even applicable to people with maybe disabilities, or maybe they just had like knee replacements, like you had your hip replaced?
Yeah, the beauty of these things is you can regress and progress them. So like when I had some work we were doing with elderly or some people that were post-stroke patients, they could just sit in a chair and be doing that march going across the body, and they were getting a little bit of movement. They were working across the hemisphere, connecting their brain together again, and things like that. And the vestibular stuff you can do just with the eye movements first, and then limited head movements. So you really can do a lot. They have some great stories when you go through the training about, people that just because you're tapping back into the way you're able to move, and if you've been moving away from that for years and years, just getting your body back into moving that way again can make a big difference. People that came in on struggling on a cane have actually walked out of their studio, or studios of people they've trained before. So it can be very powerful getting you back to that default. And it's just a matter, the one thing they also is a basic rule is they don't want you to move into pain. So if something's painful, don't do it. Okay. Try to stay out of pain, change the range of motion. Don't fight through that. You can, looking at some of the questions, it depends on if you have time. As far as doing all the resets in the session, Tim Anderson recommends doing a daily movement routine. If we want to keep our bodies healthy and move, taking a little bit of time every day to do some of these, and it could be picking one of each of them. I mean, breathing, you can do that anywhere. You can do your diaphragmatic breathing. You can do your head nods. I've been to the Philippines enough that, you're sitting in traffic for 2 hours. You can do some diaphragmatic breathing and head nods, and you're not going to crash into anybody because you're just sitting still. So you can work some of these things into your normal routine. So foot from the knee.
Well, I bet breathing can be done every second.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the way you're made to breathe. So just getting back to that normal, where it becomes your more normal. Like ever since I've learned how to do it, that's mainly my normal, unless I have a cold or something, or I'm stuffed up, then I try to breathe out of my lungs. But other than that, it becomes more natural.
Well, in respect to breathing, of course, all these exercises, breathing is an integral part of doing the exercises. Is there a recommended rhythm of breathing, like maybe a 3-count breathing in, 3-count breathing out, or something?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just you want to take a good, deep diaphragmatic breath. If the counting helps, then that's a good method. But as long as you're being nice and controlled and constantly filling the lungs and releasing, I think that's the most important part. But if for somebody the counting helps, then by all means that's a good method for them. A lot of times going slower on these is better. You can play with the tempo, especially if you get a chance to crawl. Play with the tempo and see how much different it feels. And you can elevate these, just like you can regress these, like a question for the knee. We can elevate them and make them harder for athletes. Coach Ryan probably can give you some good information on that because he's played around him. He's got his videos of tormenting Philip, making him do all the crawls. But at Barton, I have an 88-pound chain, so it's probably about a 40 kilo chain that I can pull, or I can attach it to my one end on my wrist, one on my ankle. That'll make it a challenge. Tim Anderson's crawled a mile before. I think he did it twice. Somebody challenged him to do it, and he did it. And then the guy asked him if he videotaped it, and he said he didn't, so he had to do it again. But that might not be. Tim's written a lot of books too. He actually did we actually were in Boracay where he actually did a retreat, which was a Becoming Bulletproof retreat. And if you ever, especially if you're thinking about things that you can do to work mental toughness, check out his Becoming Bulletproof book, because it's all about putting your body into sort of uncomfortable situation so that uncomfortable comes normal. So doing things like doing 3 minutes of those slow crawls or 3 minutes of those ice skaters. His thing is if mentally you get to a point where it's like, hey, this isn't so bad, then it makes everything else easier. So that's another good resource out there. We had 2 guys from Italy, and they were going so slow they hardly covered any ground at all in 3 minutes. It was incredible.
Well, speaking of Coach Ryan, we have Coach Ryan here, guys, and after Tim has done this talk of his, Coach Ryan is the next best thing when it comes to original strength here in the Philippines, as Coach Ryan is the one doing spreading the gospel of original strength through the Athletes in Action seminars that we do, and together with Coach Tim, who helps a lot. How many years have you been doing this, Tim, here in the Philippines? How many times have you been coming back?
I think we figured it. I think the first trip was 2011 when I did the stuff with the POC.
Oh, so, yeah. Original strength. But even before the original strength, you were already coming.
Yeah, original strength here, only been about like 2-3 years. Yeah.
2008.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah, I remember that year. It was a very memorable year for me.
Are you Coach Petit?
Yes.
Original strength guys here in the Philippines. So not only me.
Ito si Mr. Dimas, si Kirby, is asking for a short-term course for certification on original strength. I think you have to just confer with Coach Ryan, because I think Coach Ryan has been doing this with Coach Tim here in the Philippines. So if you have your other original strength questions that you want to course through Coach Tim and even to Coach Ryan, who's also here, I think that's the time that we have. But maybe there's one question that been going through everybody's minds. You're being head of sports performance back in Barton. I know that we were talking the other night about going online. So maybe a word of advice or sharing your thoughts on how to go around as a PE teacher, or maybe just part of sports department in schools. Any way to go around or how to go about doing things now online?
What I've seen a lot, and I know our coaches were doing a lot before our semester ended, was just a lot of videos. And I've even seen a lot of coaches doing, having their athletes do the videos showing back. So you can sort of have a little bit of accountability. It's a little bit of prep work, being creative, like using things like backpacks filled with books, or using things to get creative with weights, using things like the big bottles of water, because everything is progression. And I think, is it in 2 weeks we're doing a talk on return to play. I mean, the biggest thing is when you get a chance to eventually to bring your teams back together, you got to assume like they haven't been doing anything and really starting from square one, because safety has always got to be your big concern. So whatever you do, start them with the basics and then progress from there to keep them safe. The tricky part is nobody can get to equipment, so how do you continue to progress things to challenge their bodies? Eventually that becomes an issue.
Well, I think the key words that you shared are, number one, I think really creativity. Everybody's just got to be, I think by this time, everyone's forced to be more creative in going about their business, whatever field they're in, and do their research. They just got to do their research and be creative with the information that they have.
Yeah, if you Google like those movement stacks, or I mean, there's a lot of higher level stuff. Like those rolls that we did on the ground, you can do elevated rolls where you're on all fours, and that really puts a little bit more emphasis on there. There's a guy named Mark Shropshire. They actually have a original strength performance book, and he's one of the writers with Tim Anderson. He's got some great stuff on there on Instagram, and doing dumbbells into elevated rolls, it can get pretty intense. So those type of things. Once you get back into a weight room, you can also use these things in between sets. So things like that rocking, you can do in between sets of squats. And I've done it before working out on a leg press, where I feel stronger as I'm going through my sets because I'm doing these resets in between instead of feeling weaker. So that nervous system aspect really can be powerful, even integrated with our traditional exercise.
Well, the only roll that I'm interested in are the fried spring rolls that's waiting for me downstairs, and I think everybody's hungry right at this time. Thank you, Coach Tim, Dr. Tim. Thank you, guys. You Google him up and check out his 3 books. I have 2 books of his, which were signed, so those are practically collector's items now. Collector's items. And if you do have other questions about original strength, again, Coach Ryan is here also for AIA Philippines to help out. And thank you so much, Tim. Would you end our session with a prayer? We'd love to hear you pray.
All right, thank you. God, we just thank you for bringing us all here together and taking this challenging time and actually creating some of these blessings, like time with family and time to connect, like this community of coaches. And we just ask that you bring us through this safely and healthfully, build our knowledge and build our health, and allow us to use things like original strength to really vitalize and help our bodies to be like you designed them, fearfully and wonderfully made. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. And coaches, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoy your rolls. I enjoy my rolls with pinakurat suka, or it's like spiced vinegar, Tim.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and do a follow up on the rest of the Athletes in Action webinars or sessions that we would be having in the future. Thank you so much, guys. God bless. Coach Tim, Coach Ryan, please stay for a while to talk about things.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sirs and ma'ams. Thank you po. Salamat.